And joining us now to discuss the ever-evolving landscape in the Middle East and discuss the future of Palestinians is now Amir Weitmann, head of the Libertarian Caucus in Likud. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Thank you.
So I might start with a grand question. What future do you see for Palestinians?
Well, the main problem of the Palestinians today is the same problem that they've had over the past 100 years, really, is that these people are steeped into Jewish hatred. They hate the Jews. That's at the end of the day is their problem in one sentence. So long as these people are consumed with hatred, racism, fanaticism, anti-Semitism, and frankly, the refusal to let us live here in this land, I think that we on our side, of course, have got no other choice but to defend ourselves, and therefore the future of the Palestinians is bleak as their past has been. Because instead of creating something for themselves and for the world, a good society where people can have a good life, they have been concentrated over 100 years now in destruction, and the results are not very good. And I don't think that looking forward, anything better is going to come out of these people looking at what's has been happening recently, unfortunately.
Right, Ms. Weitmann, from what you say then, it sounds as though the possibility of a one-state solution, a merged solution, if you like, between Gaza, West Bank and Israel is out of the question. What about the two-state solution? How much support is there for that? And is that a sustainable solution, in your opinion?
So that's, of course, the great question. It's what you ask now is the best question that has to be asked. Well, you know, former president and candidate to presidency Donald Trump said this week that he thought, and it's very peculiar because, as you know, Trump is not very well known for admitting that he's wrong, right? But he did say a couple of days ago that he thought that the two-state solution is a good idea, but looking at the hatred that there is within the Palestinian people against the Jews and the fact that their kids are being taught to hate, he thinks that it may not be possible. And he's right. And that's what we have been saying always. No, I don't think a two-state solution is possible because these people are, if you essentially give them a state, then they're going to have the means to carry on the war against the Jews from a much, much strengthened position threatening our mere existence. This is not possible for us. And therefore, I do not see, and that's not only my personal opinion, it's the opinion of the overwhelming majority of the Israeli people. We do not see the possibility of having a Palestinian state. If you're talking about a solution in terms of having a permanent solution, I think the unfortunate truth is that I do not see a realistic solution in the foreseeable future. Something that's going to be stable and solve this problem. Because again, to have a solution, you need to have people who are willing to find a solution. There's no technical problem to find a solution. We could technically split the land in two if there was goodwill on both sides, but there is no goodwill. And there has never been goodwill. This is not a new issue. This has been going on for 100 years. And even beforehand, if you look at the history of Islam in the Middle East, you have to remember that Jews have been ethnically cleansed from the land of Israel in the 7th century. That's 1,400 years ago almost. So this is nothing new. We're talking about people who are consumed with a radical, fanatic ideology of essentially, religious supremacy. They refuse to share anything with anybody else. It's not only the problem of the Jews. You can see the same sort of problem now, for instance, in Africa, in Nigeria. You can see it in Egypt even last week, where you had Christians who were barred from building a church, and the church was burned. And you have Christians being ethnically cleansed all over the Middle East. And it's so, and remember also the Yazidis a few years ago in Iraq, etc., etc., etc. Jews have been entirely cleansed ethnically cleansed from the Middle East outside of Israel. There are no Jews left. Now you have to remember, Jews have been living in the Middle East for over 3,300 years. We are original inhabitants of this land. I'm not even talking only about the land of Israel. I'm talking about, for instance, Aleppo in Syria, which is the oldest Jewish community in the world with a undiscontinued presence of Jews. This stopped just a few years ago, after 3,000 years of non-stop Jewish presence, etc. But there are no Jews. Why? Because you cannot live with people who have got these sort of ideologies. And what we are seeing now, and it's unfortunate, is that some parts of the Western world, for some weird reason that we could go into, have adopted these people as their allies. But I think that the majority of civilized people in the world, in the West and beyond the West, understand that this sort of radical Islamist ideology is dangerous, not only for the Jews and for Israel, certainly, but for everybody. So you asked me...
Right, and now looking at the situation, you've raised an important point, stating that this issue has been going on for centuries. Now, but there is one problem where we see that hatred generates more hatred, and it's being passed now from generation to generation. It's now hatred fuels up more hatred in time. So I guess that now, let's say, a state solution is not on the table. Perhaps now, what do you think? How to mend that, really? Is there any program? Is there any possible way to educate now new generations to come to show that, well, there is not such a big gap between the two now nations, and that peace can be achieved in a way? Do you think that perhaps now targeting, let's say, younger generations, but now showing them that knowledge is power and that hatred is not a solution? Do you think that perhaps this could help? What do you think about this?
Well, what you're talking, again, you're asking the right question, both of you, and I want to commend you on that. This is the main question, as I said. It reminds me a little bit of what happened in Germany, Italy, and Japan after the Second World War. It was called in Germany denazification. Right now, Putin has used this word in a very, very bad way, of course, and completely in a lying way concerning Ukraine. But what you're talking about is doing some sort of a denazification of the Palestinian society. The problem is that Nazism in Germany was a very recent phenomenon, and it was not a normal state of the German nation. This was some sort of a crazy aberration, which was short-lived. But if you went back into history, Germany was a civilized nation. But you don't have, with the Palestinians, in the Muslim lands, you do not have the same sort of cultural background which allows for denazification, because as you see now, there are almost no, I would say, peaceful streams within mainstream Islam. They are all radicals, more or less. But the solution would be to secularize the Muslim world and to teach them essentially Western values. That would be the solution. But this is very, very difficult and complicated. And unfortunately, until such, I would say, cultural changes happen from within, from the Arab Palestinian society, I do not see any solution now. The only good news that I can tell you is that you can see in the Gulf, in Saudi Arabia, you can see in the UAE and other places in that region, that some of the Arab people there have become much more tolerant, much more westernized in a way. And you can see, by the way, Jews have flocked to Dubai, to Abu Dhabi and places like that, because they have tolerance. Right. You have a thriving and growing Jewish community. So if we could have the same sort of process within the Palestinian society, then yes, I would answer to you that maybe something is possible.
I was actually, that leads very well onto what I was hoping to ask in the last few seconds, Mr. Weitmann. You think about the Abraham Accords, you think about the normalization of relationships between Israel and Bahrain, amongst others. But it was when Israel got close to doing the same with Saudi Arabia, that suddenly Iran decided that it was going to, get its proxies to agitate more, to become more violent against Israel, and throw that process off track. Isn't that always going to be the threat?
Well, we need to destroy the Iranian regime. There's no way around that. This regime has to go. I think the West needs to understand that the continued existence of the Islamic Republic in Iran is a threat to the entire world, to the region, and to their own people. This regime needs to go. But the sad thing of what has been happening in the world over the past 2 years is unfortunately that the West is very, very weak. Very weak. The US is weak, Europe is weak, and because of that, we as Israelis do not have, I would say, the political backing to be strong, because we are military strong, but to be able to use significant amount of force, you need to have political backing, which we do not have in sufficient quantity. So that's the main threat, is our weakness as the West. I'm not talking only about Israel, I'm talking about us as a civilization. We are too weak because of what we're seeing in the universities recently, the lack of confidence in our values, in freedom, in democracy, in liberal democracy. This is what is threatening us. The fact that there is no more consensus among the Western values, and the fact that our civilization is what brings peace, advancement, and freedom to human beings and to the whole world. And this is under threat by the wokist left, and this is threatening the entire West and the world of descending into chaos.
Right, so I feel like these issues certainly have to be addressed. Amir Weitmann, head of Libertarian Caucus in Likud, thank you so much for joining us today.